This is a genuine organization with a genuine African story.
There is no way we can get ahead in this region and move towards prosperity by depending on others to fix things for us. We do have the ability to engage the rest of the world.
Human capital that researchers have is much greater than what it used to be.
No nation in the world develops without quality capacity.
20 years ago, I could count the number of African economists.
We provide grants to roughly 500 people across the continent.
Economic policy is so central to the being of a country. It's next to politics. You cannot run politics on technical assistance.
What we are saying is this: we want to be the best in the continent, in whatever we do. Not only in the continent, in the world, in whatever we do.
The African Economic Research Consortium, AERC, is a not-for-profit Africa-based organization that was founded in 1988 to build African capacity to conduct policy-relevant research in economics. AERC believes that development is more likely to occur where there is sustained, sound management of the economy. Furthermore, AERC considers that such management is more likely to happen where there is an active, well-informed group of locally based professional economists to do the research that policymakers need to support their decisions. AERC contributes to the development process in two ways: through support for rigorous research and through postgraduate training at master's and PhD levels.
It began as an initial interaction amongst the three East African countries. Amazingly, that was the kernel. The departments of economics, University of Dar es Salaam, University of Nairobi, and Makerere.
And it was perceived that in order to give it the opportunity to grow, it would rather be an independent institution.
In the 1980s, African countries were going through reforms to address the economic difficulties they were experiencing at the time. But local capacity for doing policy-oriented research was missing, and the stock of relevant Africa-oriented knowledge was not sufficient.
The countries themselves were not well equipped to put in place the kind of policy measures that would help solve the problems, largely because of poor capacity. And therefore, most of our economists had become used to, from the center, dictating how resources should flow to various parts of the economy. That was incompatible with the new market economy that were being developed. So AERC stepped in and provided the kind of research support that would facilitate economic reforms.
Economists in the continent needed to participate in doing the research required to inform government policy decisions. As such, there was a great need to challenge the small pool of available African researchers.
Our government used to take decisions without prior research. Universities, on the other hand, were conducting their training program, their research, without due regard to the policy making. So ARC was established precisely to actually try to fill the gap between research and policy.
Although ARC was started by foreign donors, there came a time when Africans needed to take ownership of the organization and its activities. Professor Beno Ndulu served as the first African executive director of AERC and has since risen in the economics ranks to become the governor of the Bank of Tanzania. Among the many African countries that support AERC's programs today are Kenya, Nigeria, Zambia, and South Africa.
One basic responsibility of government is policy decision on agriculture, on industry, on tourism, on education, on health, a whole spectrum of issues on which government must make policies.
The consortium is now the major producer in sub-Saharan Africa of central bank and Ministry of Finance officials, as well as top economic advisors in government and the private sector. In addition, thousands of academics are products of AERC's capacity building initiatives. The capacity building, which has grown and expanded over the years, began with a focus on support for learning by doing research.
The research arm is really the oldest track that the ARC was engaged in. In terms of research, if I have to dissect the core objective of capacity building, I actually come up with 4 goals. The first goal being you're creating capacity for research that is policy oriented. Secondly, you are not just creating capacity for policy-oriented research, but also through learning by doing, you are producing research that is policy-oriented, that will be disseminated for the consumption of others. And the third is this short-term interface between high-level policy officials and research, promoting greater linkage between research and policy. And the fourth, ARC in its existence and its multitude of activities, capacity building, networking, has created incredible opportunities for us actually to retain talent in the region.
Research cannot stand alone, however, and AERC manages 2 graduate training programs that meet international standards. The Collaborative Master's Program, dubbed CMAP, and the Collaborative PhD Program, referred to as the CPP.
Our original objective was to look at PhD training, not the MA. But we quickly realized that you could not go to the PhD because everything else below was very, very weak. So we decided that the entry point had to be the master's. Why? Because it has 2 effects. One is that it sets standards for the undergraduate level, what people need to do if they want to go to a master's program. Secondly, it prepares people by giving them a solid foundation to do a good PhD, particularly in the area of coursework, because at that time, African PhDs generally, and degrees at African universities, were by thesis alone.
AERC's training agenda includes an annual residential program known as the Joint Facility for Electives, or JFE, that serves both the CMAP and the CPP. JFE is an intensive 3 to 4 month residential training program that brings instructors and students from AERC network universities to one facility to undertake a commonly agreed set of elective courses.
It is a good experience and with a lot of exposure, because we'll be having colleagues from different countries like University of Namibia, some are coming from Botswana, some are coming from Ghana, Uganda, including Zimbabwe. And like what JFE does, you won't be staying with a person from your own university, from your own country. They'll give you a different person as your roommate.
The training program has 4 major elements. The first one is the Collaborative Masters in Economics, which is the largest program in terms of numbers. Then it also has the Collaborative PhD program and the Collaborative Masters in Applied and Agricultural Economics. Additionally, the training program has elements of research that are closely linked to training, including the Data Analysis and Knowledge Management Hub and the Climate Change Capacity Building Program.
We support the WFP country office in data collection exercise, which means training of enumerators and the supervision of surveys. Also, we analyze the data and we validate this data, and also we produce reports related to this project.
AERC holds 2 major events each year for both policymakers and researchers in their network. Biannual research workshops held in June and December form an important means for monitoring the quality and timeliness of AERC-supported research.
At the beginning, it was mainly macroeconomic policies, but now we have technical sessions in the area of poverty, macroeconomics, investment and growth, finance, which is another aspect that wasn't there at the beginning. Then we have political economy, and now we have trade as well.
Resource persons who are senior economists give their comments on the quality of the research reports, offering constructive criticism to ensure that the young researchers produce relevant quantitative research that can support policy.
So essentially one of the strengths of the thematic research modality is that the researchers, we provide the opportunity for training of researchers through our technical training workshops that we hold, and also the biannual research workshop itself actually provides scope for skills training, as people can, or the researchers can learn from their peers and also can learn from the resource persons.
A peer review during the workshops also allows the sharing of ideas while improving each other's research. The plenary sessions of these workshops provide a platform for presenting commissioned papers that explore new research themes and approaches. The biannuals, as they are called, have become the largest regularly scheduled gatherings of economists on the continent. The other major event is the Senior Policy Seminar. Held once a year, these regional seminars bring together some of the continent's top policymakers and AERC researchers to debate issues of the day and their impact on policy making in Africa.
Strangely, the broad unemployment rate, in other words, people who are searching and people who are discouraged, is about the same up to age 30 for most groups, no matter what their education. But the rate of, which is strange, I have to say. But having said that, the rate of discouragement is very high for those with primary and secondary education.
AERC is professionally run by 3 complementary governance organs: the Board of Directors, the Program Committee, and the Secretariat. It manages its training programs through academic boards.
AERC has imparted a sense of professionalism in economics as a discipline.
Tapping into the network of AERC gets us to access studies that have been done by researchers on the development challenges.
We believe that AERC is one of those institutions that are important to continue supporting. AERC contributes to African economic policy making through the increased pool of economists that are now working in various African governments, institutions, and also in the private sector.
AERC has awarded fellowships to numerous African researchers, and its alumni contribute directly to implementing stronger monetary and other macroeconomic policies across the region.
One of AERC's key funding and sustained partners is the United States Agency for International Development, USAID. In fact, USAID was among the first partners that came on board of AERC's inception to nurture and support the organization that has now grown into and transformed into a premier capacity building, policy research and training institution in Africa.
AERC is one of our best investments in capacity building in Africa. We've benefited from the training programs, from the research workshops. They inform our thinking about economic policy in Africa. And of course, many of the alumni of AERC are now our counterparts in government.
It may not be easy to measure the impact of capacity building, but AERC's presence in Africa can be felt through the interaction of its network members with governments.
Africa was consuming goods, but also ideas from outside. So AERC is about promoting generation of ideas from within Africa.
I have gained a lot myself in terms of experience and even the financial support you get, and some of the literature that you get at AERC, it's not easy to come by.
Tremendous benefit to the African governments because they now have economists who appreciate the African reality. They're not trying to conceptualize outside of Africa. There are people who have lived in the continent, they grew up there, and they are now experts. So the government has the best policy options to pick from.
I think the ARC economists will be preferred because they are highly capable people.
Government hopefully now will not implement those policies. It's one thing for you to articulate good policies, it's another thing for government to implement. But over time, if we sustain this, then the governments in Africa will have no choice.
The AARC network consists of current and former AARC researchers, resource persons, policymakers, universities, and governance bodies. It also includes instructors for the CMAP and CPP elective courses, students and institutions supported by AARC, and members of the academic boards.
Africanization, globalization, integration, privatization, technology are the pillars, but with the same vision. So we're not changing the strategic plan that we have, but it's really a way of prioritizing strategies and conceptualizing what our activities are going to be moving forward. Together, amongst the network of researchers, resource people, governance bodies, and African stakeholders, we will move it to the next level of excellence. And I'm really sure about that.